Evening. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining this important conversation organized by International Child Advancement and African Diaspora Connection. I'm Jessica Ngambi, founder of African Diaspora Connection, a platform that empowers diaspora initiatives through connection, knowledge, and resource sharing. I will be your moderator for this event. I also want to introduce you all to Serene, International Child Advancement Volunteer and Project Assistant, who will be supporting today's event. So we are excited to participate in Congo Week this year. For those of you who may not know, Congo Week has galvanized the participation of people in over 75 countries and 600 university campuses and communities since 2008. The purpose of Congo Week is to raise global consciousness about the situation in Congo and advocate for peace, justice, and human dignity in partnership with the Congolese people. This year, it's taking place from Sunday, October 13th to Saturday, October 19th. So tomorrow is the end of Congo Week. So let's get into why Congo matters. Congo is arguably the richest country on the planet in terms of natural resources, with precious minerals that are vital to the functioning of modern society, such as uranium, cobalt, copper, gold, diamonds, timber, iron, tin, and cobalt, a mineral, that I just mentioned, a mineral that is essential to the use of cell phones, laptops, and other consumer electronics. The DRC is also home to the Congo Basin, the second largest rainforest in the world, which plays a vital role in regulating the global climate and housing immense biodiversity. The DRC has over 200 ethnic groups and over 240 languages spoken, making it one of the most culturally diverse countries in the world. The DRC's Inga Dam has the potential to generate enough hydroelectric power to supply electricity to most of Africa. So as you can see, due to Congo's strategic location and in the heart of Africa and the lust for its natural resources, powerful nations have repeatedly destabilized Congo since the 1940s, when Portuguese explorers arrived at the mouth of the Congo River, establishing the first contact with the very powerful and highly developed Congo and Luba empires. Unfortunately, this led to the slave trade, leading to its decline by the 19th century. For 300 years, more than 5 million people from the kingdoms were captured within several hundred miles on either side of the Congo River mouth, with most shipped to Brazil. By the 1870s, another European power, Belgium this time, proceeded with a conquest led by their King Leopold. Then on November 15, 1884, the leaders of 15 Western countries came together to discuss control of Africa's resources. Known as the Berlin Conference, they sought to discuss the partitioning of Africa, establishing rules to amicably divide resources among Western countries at the expense of the African people. Of these 14 nations at the Berlin Conference were France, Germany, Great Britain, Portugal, and the US. Notably missing were any representatives from Africa. King Leopold was given control of Congo, and under his rule, an estimated 10 to 15 million Congolese were killed. The Kuba Kingdom resisted but was ultimately subdued. By 1950, following protests, including the 1959 Leopoldville riots, Congo gained independence on June 30th, 1960, electing its first prime minister, Patrice Lumumba. By 1961, unfortunately, Patrice Lumumba was assassinated by Western powers and Congolese elites. The US installed Joseph Désiré Mobutu into power. 1996, USA and British-backed Rwanda and Uganda led the invasion of Congo, initiating the First Congo War. Mobutu's dictatorial regime ends in 1997. Then Laurent Kabila is placed in power. Then in 97 and 98, President Mobutu is overthrown. Laurent Kabila is installed in power, and then British and US-backed Rwanda and Uganda invade Congo a second time. By 2002, the war had officially ended, but conflicts persist to this day, specifically in Eastern Congo. That's when Laurent Kabila was assassinated and replaced by his son, Joseph Kabila. Now, unfortunately, due to decades of conflict, the DRC has become one of the most challenging places in the world for women and children. Violence against women and children and girls have been described as deep-seated cultural norms. And tragically, 48 women were raped in Congo every hour. Hundreds of thousands of women have been systematically assaulted as a weapon of war. Congolese women face challenges navigating widespread conflict and insecurity, growing food, raising and providing education for their children, and maintaining households under dire conditions. Many children have been forced to become child soldiers, while others witnessed extreme violence and loss. An estimated 3,377 grave violations against children were verified in 2002, including killings, injuries, abductions, and sexual violence. The war has disrupted education and healthcare systems, resulting in widespread malnutrition and stunted growth. More than 1 million children are at risk of acute malnutrition. The ongoing conflict has disrupted the education of around 750,000 children in affected provinces, when 2,100 schools forced to stop operating between January 2002 and March of 2023. 2023. These challenges have severely affected children's development and future prospects. The trauma and stress from these experiences have led to long-term mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Now, obviously, that is incredibly dire. It's an incredibly dire situation and sad, but there has been resistance. In the face of these overwhelming challenges, the resilience and activism of Congolese women offer a beacon of hope. Following President Tshisekedi's call for young people to participate in these efforts, many women have joined the local defense militia called the Wazalendo in taking up arms against the M23 group that is launching attacks in the DRC. The women of South Kivu also mobilized very early during the conflict to denounce sexual violence and impunity and to fight for the recovery of victims' rights. So right here, we have a few of these organizations. So in the province of Bukavu, the Coalition Against Sexual Violence was formed following a consultative meeting between several local women's organizations. They put together a proposal to the Congolese legislative authorities for reforming national criminal law to redefine and reinforce provisions against rape. Unfortunately, these proposals went unheeded. So as you can see, there you can all read, there's been women's organization leading change, such as Coalition Against Sexual Violence, Maison des Femmes, Friends of the Congo, as well, and Association Comité Afro-European work to rescue children trapped in child labor in the mines. Amid these hardship, Congolese diaspora women have taken concrete steps to assist victims of the conflict. According to the International Fund for Agriculture Development, the African diaspora sent over $95 billion in remittances to and within Africa in 2021, benefiting more than 200 million family members, most of whom live in rural areas. This amount surpasses foreign direct investment and foreign aid. This financial support plays a crucial role in alleviating poverty, improving education, and fostering development. It highlights the significant impact of the diaspora individuals in driving substantial change. Tonight, we aim not only to shed light on the profound impact of these words on women and children in DRC, but also to celebrate the diaspora women leaders who are driving change and do not receive the recognition they deserve in the development sector, which I work in. Our panel features inspiring experts and Congolese diaspora women who are making a difference through community service, advocacy, and innovative initiatives. They will share their experiences and insights on these critical issues and discuss how we can all contribute to positive change. So we are honored tonight to have with us Nana, founder of Women's Immigrant and Refugee Club, supporting immigrant and refugee women in the US. Olivia, director of iHeart Africa Congo and general manager globally, who's passionate about African development led by Africans. Evelyn, who is the founder of International Child Advancement, who empowers youth, underprivileged children through education and mentorship. And we have Dr. Valerie Adams-Bass, development psychologist specializing in interventions for youth across the diaspora who have experienced trauma. I'll invite each panelist to introduce themselves. And for those who are from Congo, please share a bit about your journey to the US. Nana, would you please start with your introduction?
Sure. Yeah, as you all know, my name is Nana Aluma, and I was born and grew up in the Congo DRC. I'm originally from the east of Congo. I moved in to the States 9 years ago with my daughter. And arriving here, I went back to school and got an MBA, a Master in Business Administration at Canisius. And so now I'm working at M&T as a financial analyst in the finance department. And other than my job, I do a lot of volunteer work. So I volunteer at Johnny's End as a mentor I mostly mentor young immigrants, assisting them in the journey, like especially when they're new in the country. And this year I started WIRC, which is Women Immigrants and Refugees Club, because my vacation is like to focus on immigrants and help each other, support each other. So this week means a lot for me because it brings me back to where I'm from and why I ended up in the US. So I remember the conflict and I remember the trauma. And so it just brings me like, if we didn't have war and conflict back home, I wouldn't be here. I'll be enjoying my family. I wouldn't leave everything behind. So yeah, that's just me in briefly.
Thank you so much, Nana, for sharing your story with us. Now, Olivia, could you please also introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Mandawi. I'm Congolese, was born in Kinshasa in 1998. For those of you who have read the history books, you know that that year was a very, very crucial year. I moved to the UK when I was a child, about three years old, and I actually got into community projects via sports, and I just fell in love with it. So I've been working with I Heart Africa for 3 years now, and I have had a leadership role for just over a year. And yeah, it's been a really, really very interesting journey. We've managed to build a community of 100 people in a place where community doesn't exist. We look after 25 children, we feed them, we pay their medical expenses, school fees, clothes. And we also built a village of 24 houses so they can live with their extended families. Some of them are orphans, some of them come from single parent households. So that's our current project that we are working on. And we are trying to move into a space of advocacy and see how we can make a bigger impact to change the tech industry.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Olivia. Also, we'll move on to Evelyn. We'd love to hear from you.
Good evening, everyone. And first and foremost, I just want to thank again everyone that has joined us this evening, taking the time out of your Friday evening to be curious, to learn, to hear about the DRC and how you can potentially support. So I'm Evelyn Kessler. I'm a second generation immigrant. My family is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I was born in the US, but left the US at 8 years old and traveled around different countries in my early years when we moved back and eventually landed in Eastern DRC, living right in Goma. So at the height of, or should I say in the middle of where all the conflict has been happening. And I was living in Goma when the genocide in Rwanda actually started. I crossed the border every year to go to school in Rwanda, and I was attending a Belgian school. And that genocide started because the president in Rwanda was assassinated, and there were speculations that the Belgians were involved. So my school was bombed, and thankfully no one was there. But that was a wake-up call at the time for my mom to get me out of the country, and I was able to leave, travel to France to continue my education, then came back to the US and was blessed enough to be able to go through the typical progression, right? That you can think of. You go through your education, you start your career. I got married, started a family, but throughout all of that, I kept hearing of the atrocities happening back home. I kept hearing of what our family, my family was going through and the deaths and the number of children being left behind, right? Because towns, villages were being wiped out, families were being killed at a time. And at that point, I recognized, okay, it's time for me to reach back and support and help these kids who did not have the same chance that I did. And that's how International Child Advancement got started in 2016.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for sharing your experience. And we will conclude the introductions with Dr. Valerie Adams-Batts. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks everyone for spending time with us on this Friday evening to round out Congo Week. My name is Valerie Adams-Batts. I'm excited to be here. So if I'm talking too fast, say slow down. I am African-American, right? I'm here and I am a developmental psychologist. I specialize in working primarily with youth, teenagers and young adults, college-age children. And you can't work with teenagers or youth. You can't work with children without working with their parents. But the focus of the interventions that I've been involved with, as well as my research, is youth-centered, right? So including their voice, understanding their perspectives and experiences. And as we were preparing for this evening, I'm not Congolese, as I mentioned, I'm African-American. My parents definitely were part of the Great Migration from the south of the United States to the north. So I'm born and raised in the northern part, the eastern seaboard. And what I would say as we get started and you're hearing us discuss the questions is there's no simple answer, and you really can't simplify the impact of trauma. And so hopefully we can dig into that and help you to understand and help each other, as well as the community, figure out how to do a better job at working with families and children, particularly girls who I work with, but children and women around these issues of trauma. So I'm happy to be here. I take an ecological perspective, which means we're always evolving as humans and really take into consideration every aspect of a community to figure out what works best for the young people that we want to support. So thanks for having me, and I'm excited for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adams-Batts, for such great points, such insightful points, and for willing to share your expertise with us. So let's begin our discussion. We're actually on time, so we're doing great. We're going to start with Nana. So the DRC has been called the most dangerous place in the world to be a woman. How has this reality influenced your work with immigrant and refugee women through your initiative? Oh, you're muted, Nana, sorry.
Yes, so as a woman coming from Congo, so I came here, I was already an adult, a mom, and so I was married, very young, I got married, and I was in a very abusive relationship. And so a big part is start with our culture, culture and tradition made by men. So, they have power on women. We are just like subhuman. So starting with that and going with war and conflict, women and children are just so vulnerable. And then the one who pay the price, the bigger price, are paid by the women and children.
Oh, I think you're muted again, sorry.
Oh, it just unmute itself. Sorry, I didn't touch it. So I've seen conflict since I was like 15-year-old. I've been in very difficult situations, seeing how women suffered, raped, seeing my own mother, managing their own kids when there are conflict, when there is war. It's just so much trauma. And becoming a young adult, getting married very young, getting my own trauma, managing my own family. So when I got here in the US, I did have that. I knew already how we suffered as women. And I just wanted to keep, helping women, helping us, getting other women who can help me, like deal with my own drama. It's difficult, and raising a kid, coming here as a single mom, it was just so difficult. And coming here, I have to go back to school, not speaking the language, mixing all that. I started a small job because my degree from Congo was not recognized here. Mixing all that experience, the
Mhm.
culture, you know, social integration, everything was different. So
Mhm.
I'm like really dedicated to just keep helping women, support each other's, all of us, and then we can build a society where women have a voice, where
Mhm.
women find their own strength.
Mhm.
So also I think I see an issue with ourselves women, the way our society builds us.
Mhm.
We have that mindset of thinking, oh, I'm just a woman. And that's
Mhm.
just how it is. So that's why I really focus on us, and I want to create that environment of women helping each other and
Mhm.
change our mindset
Mhm.
to make ourselves first, change the way we see ourselves and the way the world around us see us, the way the world around us treat us.
Mhm.
So when I got here, right away I started volunteering.
Mhm.
I was not helping women only, but also, you know, young male.
Mhm.
And I did also receive a lot of help for me to be where I am, because I couldn't do it myself.
Mhm.
With a kid going to work, going to school. And so that's why I am really dedicated to this community. I want to give back the community in Buffalo and the community of like immigrants and refugees, because I know how difficult it is to deal with our own trauma, then coming here, encountering all these challenges we encounter here, you know. There is discrimination, you know, not speaking the language, being a Black woman. I didn't know that I'm going to experience that here in the US. I just know that I'm a woman. I'm going to go there and do my life. But yeah, so we really help each other. My mission is to improve the life of women, and we like address some we'll be addressing so many factors, such as cultural, social, and economic factors as well. Because if we're not economically independent, we be always those, you know, weak women in depending on men, you know. So we have that structure of helping ourselves in all those factors, all those what can I say, you know, the factors. Yeah, I don't want to repeat myself. So I hope I did explain myself.
No, that was beautifully articulated. Thank you so much, Dana. And just a follow-up question to that, as you've obviously where you're working with these women who have been experienced this trauma similar to yours, how does your initiative support them when they arrive to the US, I should say?
Yeah, so what we doing is share experiences, because we learn a lot with other people's experiences, and when we share our experiences, we also help other, you know, learn and, you know, get improve their own life with other women experiences. So it's more resources. We share resources. We share experiences, connections, everything that can help us to empower ourselves, and not just being those immigrant women who are here to just think about less, think about small job, because we women, we can do nothing, and our society made us be those subhumans. So we really want to take ourselves in a different level and help each other, empower ourselves, get any resources, not help each other with trying to get good, try to find scholarship, to get higher education. Myself, I got a chance to get a scholarship. That's how I did my master's degree. So I also want to help other women, you know, they can get up their education so they can, you know, they can be powerful and help their families. Because when a woman is educated, it has a really positive impact in their own life and in the families. And, you know, they empower the society around them.
That is beautiful and so needed. So thank you so much for sharing that and your work and everything you're doing. So the next question will be for Olivia. How does I Heart Africa address issues of violence and adolescent trauma to support survivors in your projects and partnership?
So, like I mentioned before, we created a community. We do not condone any sort of form of violence. It is one of our village codes of conduct. But it is difficult when your whole life you've been surviving, you've just been in survival mode your whole life. It is difficult to unlearn those behaviors, and we've had to teach the adults and the parents and the carers in our village how to live as one, how to share, and how to be a community. And not everyone's gonna like everybody, but at the same time, we've had to let them know that it's in the best interest of the children that they see that you can actually get along even if you have problems. And with the children, we do have time. I think there's like 2 or 3 times a week where we speak to them about just general issues of life. So when they come back from school, they'll have their revision time, and then they'll have free time and they can play. But then there are certain days in the week where we have discussions, and it's mainly to just let them know that certain behaviors are not okay, and that if they do notice that something is happening or something has happened, that they should feel confident enough to tell us. And we will believe them, because one of the things that we've noticed in this community is that no one's believed, oh, they're just children, they don't know what they're talking about, when really and truly that's not the case. And just from one person saying that you're making things up will lead to a lifetime of trauma. We've also had children that have experienced some serious traumas, and we've offered counseling. I know that in Goma is like a very interesting place, and there's literally one person. I say it's like this, like one person that does one thing. So like you'd only ever find like one psychologist or one counselor or one something, but we make the effort to go and seek these people out. And if it's a case of us bringing the children into the town so they can access those facilities, then that's what we'll do.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Olivia. No, that's very critical in incorporating expertise in these interventions. So thank you so much for sharing that. And a follow-up question, what role can the diaspora play in bringing global attention to these atrocities and advocating for change?
I mean, people don't know what they don't know, right? And a year ago, people didn't know that Congo existed. So we are still at a very early stage of advocacy and raising awareness. And I think that needs to spread. It's very important to Congolese women that their stories are told from them to the rest of the world. And it's not just a third party saying, oh yeah, by the way, this happened to this person, because it doesn't make them feel like their case is as special or as important as the next. And when it's crazy, because when Nana was saying that, it's the mentality, I was like, oh my days. It's like she read my mind. The only way that this will change is if the Congolese people change their mentality in general. Women and children are considered second-class citizens, and especially in the Goma area and up in the villages, women have no say. When I'm there, we will speak to soldiers, we'll speak to police, we'll speak to all of this, and they will give every single man a handshake and just ignore me. And I will literally just stick my hand out and look them in the eye, waiting for them to shake my hand, because hello, I'm here. So, but it's normal to them. So like when men stop protecting men, that's when things will change. When the government introduce more rights and laws for women and children, that is when things will change.
Amazing points. Thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing that. And we'll move on to Evelyn. Speaking of these deep-seated cultural norms, right, that is impacting women and children. How does ICA work to challenge and change these norms through education and empowerment?
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Oh, my blood is starting to boil as we're talking about this, right? Because as I look at all these amazing women on the panel, and even many of whom are not on the panel but are on this call, I know many of you and the impact that you have, be it in your families, folks around you, and your communities. So listen, as Nana said, truly the work that we're all doing and the way that we show up, others will see that, listen, you do need to change how you view yourself. And we need to continue to change the way we view ourselves. And as we model certain behaviors and we show girls, listen, hey, you're able, you're capable. Let me lead you through this journey, and they see that example. It's so important. So going back to your question, Jessica, one stat that I want to share is that approximately 40% of girls in the DRC experience physical violence before the age of 18. Let that sit with you for a second. And that breaks my heart because my daughter just turned 18 a couple of months ago, and I can't even fathom her experiencing some of the traumas that many of these girls have experienced. The orphanage we support, the International Child Advancement supports in Goma, we have 120 orphans that we help. A little bit more than half of them are girls. And a lot of these girls, before they arrived at the orphanage, have seen their families brutally killed, have seen their mothers raped by multiple men, have been raped themselves. And it's a very traumatizing, terrible situation. And so when you do have some deep-seated beliefs about yourself or views about society, and to Olivia's point that letting these children know certain behaviors are not okay because it tends to be normalized, right? Oh, your uncle touched you? Oh, that's normal. It's okay, just sweep it under the rug. He's family, right? I've experienced similar situations myself and dared to mention it once, and when I realized, yeah, they don't believe me, you shut down, you hold it in, and you believe, hey, this is normal, this is okay, and it's not. So what we do is, we take gender-based violence risk management actions to help girls that we support at the orphanage. Number one is providing shelter and protection. Because a lot of children, especially in the Kivu region, who experience conflict where families are being wiped out, families are being killed. You have a lot of kids who end up in the streets. They end up as street children, having to fend for themselves, living on their own in the streets. And so when the orphanage does have the space to do so, being able to help get these girls off the streets, providing them with a safe place to live and be. In 2016, when ICA was founded, the orphanage was renting out little small buildings where the children lived, but there was no gate, there was no protection. So rebels, anytime they were in town, they could just come in, take whatever they want, and attack the children and attack the volunteers who work there. But thankfully, in 2019, we were able to purchase a building in Goma where roughly 46 of those children are housed, and the rest have been placed with foster families. So at least they have that family structure where they do have some sense of protection and shelter. So that's one way. Equitable access to education is so critical because when girls have consistent access to education, it helps reduce their vulnerability to exploitation, right? And it equips them with the knowledge to understand and assert their rights. It gives them a voice, to know that, you know what, no, I learned the other day that, you know what, this is not okay. And to Olivia's point, when you help girls understand and educate them what their rights are, that they can speak up, that they need to share with an adult what happened to them, and creating that environment, that community around them that supports them, so critical for their advancement. Another important piece is economic empowerment. Nana, you spoke to this, right? Getting women to a place where they can be self-sufficient, support themselves, which is so important. You know, we have vocational training programs at the orphanage that gives girls the skills that they need, that helps reduce their dependence on potentially harmful relationships and other situations that we can all already imagine. So it gives them that opportunity to thrive and to move forward. And last but not least, of course, there are other ways, but mentorship and female models, role models, I should say. As I mentioned before, them seeing other orphans complete their education, move on, get jobs, move on, continue their education in university. We do life skills workshops with the girls to teach them, you know, how to navigate life and learning to say no. And again, learning behaviors from men and people around them that are not acceptable, that are harmful to them. So those are just some of the ways that we help tackle that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm always so inspired by when I see, you know, I see a posting, a student graduating or attending university. So this will be the next question. What can you share any success stories? And you mentioned a little bit, but you touched on a few. But if you can, you know, just share a success stories where IC's intervention have made a tangible difference in the lives of girls affected by conflict, that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely. And bear with me, guys. I need to share two because I'm so proud of these girls. Okay. One graduated high school 4 years ago, and she decided to go the path of vocational training. She completed the sewing vocational training program. She was able to start her own business. So she's able to support herself and her family. She did get married after she completed the program. She now has 3 kids. She's a foster mom to the daughter. I call her my daughter. I do sponsor a girl. It's been 5 years I've been sponsoring her. She's a foster mom to that girl, and she mentors her and other kids. And she also teaches sewing to orphans at the orphanage. So I'm just like, man, if talk about a success story, that's a perfect example of what we hope to see out of our programs, empowering these young girls to being lifted out of situations that they didn't ever think that they could be lifted out of. And we just recently, I think yesterday, posted the story of Asha Masudi. She's a young girl who her mom attempted to abort her, but that did not succeed. She was born, and after she was born, her mother committed suicide. They never knew who the father was. And she was taken in by nuns. The nuns then eventually placed her with a foster family. The foster family, unfortunately, abandoned her in the streets of Goma. And she was finally brought to the orphanage we support. And we were able to place her with an educational sponsor who supported her through high school. She graduated high school last year, and she is now in university. She's in school for nursing. She wants to be a midwife. And one thing that she shared that really brought me to tears is that, listen, I am not my story. Yes, my mom may have wanted to get rid of me, abandon me. I was abandoned to the streets, but I am not going to let that dictate where I end up. So she's committed to helping other orphans when she starts making money, making a difference, becoming a leader in her community, and using her new expertise to really make a difference. So sorry, I know I took a little bit more time, but I'm just so proud of those girls. So I had to share both of those stories.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. This is so important in these conversations, right? Again, the impact that the work that you all are doing, unfortunately, doesn't get highlighted enough. So this is a great time to showcase that. Now we're going to move on to Dr. Valerie Adams-Bass. Now, thank you for the notes I saw in the chat. You know, obviously these, like most of us who have experienced trauma, and these girls and children, you know, there's their resilience there, but underneath that resilience, there's still a lot of trauma, right? And they all manage it differently, despite just continuing to push through. And some, unfortunately, don't push through. So from a psychological perspective, from your expertise, what are the long-term effects of such pervasive violence in adolescents in conflict zones, or just generally within, you know, what you have witnessed in your field?
Yeah, so thanks for again having me. And I had to take a deep breath and say, oh, we need more than an hour, but we need to have part 2 to this webinar. And so the resilience that is expressed in the panelists here, so we can just, you know, give them praise and honor there. And in terms of the impact of trauma, I would say it never goes away. We just develop different ways to cope with it. And some of us are more adaptive than others, and our ability, where the young person's or adults' ability to manage that trauma has a lot to do with the supports that are available to those young people, to those women and children who are often the most victimized in periods of conflict, as we've heard today. One thing that wasn't said, and I don't want to move away from the trauma, but was underlying many of the stories that we heard today from our panelists, my co-panelists, is that we live in a very patriarchal society. And some cultures are more patriarchal than others. So the normalcy of not only treating women and children as secondary and being valued less and value less is something, it's almost like breathing, right? And so that happens in what we might call a typical environment. So then when we experience adversity, like a famine, like a civil war, like a coup, those members of society who were already valued less or considered valueless, although they contribute to the economy and the foundation of the society, are those who are most impacted, right? And that's most often in these contexts, women and children, as we've heard tonight. So the trauma doesn't necessarily go away. It's how the supports that you receive and how you learn to cope with it over the course of your life. So the importance is providing the supports and a network necessary for people to heal and learn to cope. And so principles that, you know, some of the principles that should guide that work is really thinking about providing safety. So we even heard, this idea of just having a building with walls and a gate, right? Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's providing clean, potable water. Sometimes it's validating someone's story. Most often, when it comes to children, whether they're adolescents or young children, it is validating the story and the experience that they've had. Not only, validating and believing them, but helping them to understand that it is not normal. It's an abnormal experience. So developing that safety, right? The physical safety as well as the emotional safety, right? And coming with that is this idea of trustworthiness. So who are the people in the community, even if it's a built community, a community that we have to put together to support those who've been traumatized, really helping that community to establish trust. And I think that can be prickly in the situation that we're describing, because everyone in that community has been traumatized. And one thing that we know about children and adolescents, as well as adults, but certainly children and adolescents, there's a level of routine that helps them to feel safe. So you have to be reflective about what kind of routine do we establish in this community where everyone has been so, awfully traumatized, right? So there's the routine there, but then part of that is also establishing that trustworthiness, and being transparent as much as possible about the decisions you're making, right? And so even if you establish a normalcy, right, still acknowledging that we're in a moment of trauma or a moment of healing, right? So even though you might be able to say we've now got a gate, or we now have running water, or we're now doing education, it's still in a space of healing from the trauma and acknowledging the trauma. So yes, you want to have the trustworthiness and transparency, but also the spaces to continue to hear the voice and to acknowledge what has been happening, what those young people and those women have been experiencing. Super important. Trying to find ways to establish peer support. And that peer support may take some coaching. So, let me tell you my story, but not necessarily I want my story to one up your story, but just really acknowledging that we've both been harmed, right? We've both been harmed. So some of these skill building and these techniques takes a modeling, practicing, and risk, right? Because particularly if you're in a position of leadership, whether it's informal or formal in a situation or community where there's been a lot of trauma, you too have to, put yourself out there and be at risk as you model and share ways of being that have been atypical or that have been disrupted, right? It's been disrupted, especially if it's a protracted situation. So that's super important. And then just empowering the voice, particularly of children and youth. I like to refer to Hart's ladder of participation for children, so that their voice is heard and they become a part of the solution, especially as you're building community. We're often, as adults, wanting to do the best and care for, and that is perfectly okay. But in the case of children who are often marginalized and definitely have had these traumatic experiences, really giving them the space and the agency, right? Supporting, lifting up their voice that they can determine and begin to contribute to the decisions that are being made on their behalf, right? And that's probably atypical too. So it takes some practice. It takes lots of patience. I don't think we say patience as part of the traumatic or trauma-informed practice, but you need lots of patience to kind of develop the trust to help young people as well as women to find their voice and to establish what might be normal as they are also healing. And this really, as I said, the elephant in the room, living in a patriarchal society when there is no conflict, famine, or war, etc., there are these normalcies that make women and children second-class citizens and disposable, right? So if we don't even think about that when we get to the place of how do we get here, we miss all of the things that as we rebuild, we might reinforce. So it's important to acknowledge the history, right? We even started out like, here's how we got here as the DRC. And then like what these trauma inequities, right? There are inequities even in the labor distribution. And so if that exists before we have famine, before we have crises, it's just going to be more pervasive. So even as we think about what do we normalize, how do we help young people and women to get that higher education? How do we help them to develop entrepreneurial skills? We also have to recognize the foundational principles, or the historic experiences, and keep them in mind as you try to recreate and rebuild and do things different, right? Because as you do that, as you was mentioned, I think Jess, you said the resiliency of this panel, someone might say you should be over it. And getting to your first question, I don't think we ever get over it. It is how you learn to cope and the resources and supports that are available to you as you go through these processes, as you go through these traumatic experiences, as you reflect on your success, as well as what happened to you and what's happening to your community at heart. So I don't think the trauma ever goes away. It's just the resilience that you develop, your ability to adapt, and that community that you build. So those are some of the principles that should be guiding any rebuilding and resilience built and shaping in communities, particularly for children. And you can't, as I say, you can't work with children or adolescents without the adults who are to care for them. And sometimes they need the training, right? Sometimes the adults need the training because they're saying their kids, they'll get over it, even in extremely traumatic situations. So sometimes part of this, trauma-informed practice is training the adults who are there to support the young people, right? I know that was long-winded. I guess we're all long-winded tonight, but I hope that was helpful.
Part two, if I have to do part two, there's so much to unpack, and thank you. I think you actually hit on all three questions. So that was beautifully articulated, and I can't thank you enough. We definitely needed that perspective. And I'm gonna throw one question for our guest expert, Adrian, who is a licensed social worker, master social worker. Adrian, thank you so much for also joining us. One question I would just ask is, based on your experience, following up from what Dr. Valerie Bass shared, what are some common behavior patterns observed in individuals who have been victims of long-term violence, and how can understanding these patterns enhance support for traumatized populations?
So like Dr. Bass said, there needs to be a lot of patience and time, because what you'll see is a lot of behaviors related to like high anxiety, probably higher anxiety that can be measured based off of what folks from the DRC have dealt with and are dealing with. So you're dealing with individuals who are experiencing like these horrific things that has disrupted everything. And if they're coming, here to the US, that's also a disruption. They're coming to be safer, but there are people, places, things, situations that can be reminders of very unsafe situations. So you'll see like, PTSD, you'll see depression. You'll also see what a lot of people don't think about is severe shifts in mood because of reminders that people don't even realize that are there, that kind of cause them to kind of be, one moment they're fine, the next minute they aren't, because something has shown up, or a smell or something, a sound has shown up, and it is putting them right back where they used to be and they don't recognize it. So it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience. And for anyone helping folks who are coming from the DRC, they need to understand that you have an individual sitting in front of you with a tremendous amount of trauma, just beyond probably what our systems can take care of. So kindness, first, attending to what they are saying. I heard you guys talk a lot about not being believed in. That is the primary thing, is the client is the expert. That person that is sitting in front of you is the expert on what they need in that moment. And you start there and slowly build a relationship. As Dr. Bass said, there's some modeling that needs to be done for the skills to be effective. So as a practitioner or whatever it is you're doing, you're that model. You're modeling the kindness, you're modeling the patience, and you're modeling like the trust building as you're sitting with this person, helping them kind of move through like the new things that they're adjusting to, and then dealing with all of those things that they come with.
Thank you so much, Adrienne, for sharing that. I know we're coming to the end of the program, and these next set of questions are, I think, for part 2 about really collaboration, how we foster that. So I think we can jump to the audience Q&A, give the audience some time to at least ask one question. So, we'll take a question from the audience if there's any before we close. Serene, Serene will be reading off the question. Okay, so I don't see any questions. So I can conclude if it's okay. Then, if there are no questions. So I'd like to thank our panelists for their invaluable contribution, and our audience for engaging in this critical discussion. It's conversations like these that not only inform, but also foster collaboration among not just diaspora women, but the global community. By uniting our efforts, we can significantly enhance support for women and children in the DRC. Together, we can make a significant, meaningful difference in driving positive change. So before the end, I'd like to invite each panelist to share a message and ways that the audience can support their work and or get involved.
Okay, I'll get us started. So again, I'm the founder and executive director of International Child Advancement. As you heard earlier, we support orphans in the DRC through education. We're always looking for education sponsors who are able and willing to fund K through 12 education, even university. I know when I say university, there's probably a little bit of panic there. We actually are able to send our kids to university for $750 a year. We actually have a child we sent to Burundi. He's studying in Burundi right now. His yearly fee is $350 a year. So it is really doable. I mean, we've had groups of women chip in to send one of the girls who graduated university about a year ago. So educational sponsorships would be huge. We're always looking for volunteers. So please reach out and we can chat.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. To all our attendees, please consider supporting these organizations, spreading awareness about the issues discussed tonight, and following our social media platforms to stay connected to learn how you can get involved. I know we think about this as, folks are trying to deal with their own stuff, but there's just, it doesn't always have to be, a very, super involved way, right? There's just spreading, just sharing a post or, in that way, it can mean the world, right? The court of public opinion is so important. And the fact that, we're starting to talk about this and we're communities, we drive the change. We can drive the change. It's not these governments, it's us. And by uniting and having conversations and collaborating, the sky's the limit. So have a great evening, everyone. And please, let's make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
you
you,
all.
everyone.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
weekend and evening.
You too.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.